This is Joel, and in this video we'll quickly look into pre-filter policy, right? So we have already talked about certain other types of policies, right? Access control, intrusion, malware and file policies. So what is very special about the pre-filter policy? Let me pull up this diagram, right, which you probably have seen hundreds of times on any firepower configuration guide. Alright, so as you see here, the pre-filter policy appears over here, right, at the very starting stage of the whole inspection. So when you set up pre-filter policy, you don't really have many options to match the traffic. You'll probably have very limited options like IPs and ports. You can't do very deep inspection here. But why do we even have this? The reason why you have this pre-filter policy is because if you are very sure that you want to drop a certain traffic, right, then there is no point in sending the traffic all the way inside, getting processed by the snort and everything, right? You'll basically be wasting the CPU of your firewall. So it doesn't make sense. So if you really know that you want to drop the traffic, maybe it's, I don't know, it could be probably some kind of a email traffic, or it could be a NTP traffic or syslog, whatever, right? A specific traffic, you know exactly you want to drop it, you can directly drop it at the pre-filter policy. That way you can prevent further inspection by, the other layers of the firewall. So that's one of the reason why you have this, right? So with pre-filter policy, you basically get options like to block immediately. Like I said, that's the use case. One is to block. The other option is to fast path it. As you see here, fast path, you can directly bypass any of the further inspection directly to the output interface here, right? Because this is, again, this option is provided because you might be doing some kind of troubleshooting, right? You might want to quickly allow this traffic to pass through without doing all this extra inspection, without going through all your policies. You would directly want that particular traffic to be sent to the output interface, because that might be a use case, right, for a temporary purpose or something like that, right? Or it might be for a permanent purpose as well, where you might know that, okay, this traffic is always going to be legitimate. There is no need to kind of process it or do deep inspection on it, right? That's other use case for fast pathing. And the traffic which is obviously not matched by the pre-filter policy will obviously be sent to the access control, and then subsequently the snort, your IPS and your malware file policy, all of that will come into play, right? So that's one of the use cases. The other use case is with the tunneling, right? So how do tunnels behave, right? So obviously if it's an encrypted tunnel, then the firewall will not be able to kind of look into it. But if it's a clear text tunnel, right, it could be maybe you're going through a IPv4 to IPv6 translation transition, and you might be using one of those IPv6 inside IPv4 tunnels, right? Or maybe IP into IP or a GRE tunnel. So in such cases, your tunnels are predominantly clear text tunnels. So firewalls, right, generally, in fact the firepower as well, what it really does is it always tries to look at it tries to make the decisions, or the policies are always acted upon based on the inner headers, right? Because in case of any kind of a tunnel, you will always have an extra encapsulation outside, right? If I have to quickly show an example of how maybe a simple GRE looks like, right? Let me get my pen here. So you're going to have something like, let's take the simplest example of ICMP, right? So you'll have your ICMP payload, and on top of that, you'll have the IP payload, because you'll be doing a ping between, I don't know, maybe 10.1 to 10.2 or something, right? So this is going to be your actual IP, but then comes your GRE header, right? So your GRE header comes here, and then on top of that, you'll have the the second layer of IP header, right? This is going to be the tunnel source and the tunnel destination IP address, and then you'll have obviously your layer 2 for your hop by hop forwarding, right? So in such a situation, right, so your pre-filtered policies, they basically give you control at this layer. They give you control at the tunneling protocol, right? Whereas your access control policies, they basically give you control at this layer, right? Because they always look at the inner headers. They basically look at the inner headers, and they make the decisions over here, whereas your pre-filter policy facilitates you to kind of write policies based on the outer header. So that's another piece which you need to remember when you talk about pre-filter policy. So these are the two use cases. One is with respect to tunnels, right? How you can kind of handle tunnels when the traffic is flowing through the firewall. So that's one place where pre-filter policy comes handy, because you can now match based on the outer headers, and then obviously once you match based on the outer headers, then you can integrate, or then you can kind of use this information inside your access control policy to kind of do further actions, which I will show you. The other option is, like I said, right, you can define rules in the pre-filter policy where you are directly dropping traffic based on a port or a application, or based on a layer 3 or layer 4 information. Alright, that being said, so let's quickly come to our lab. So what we'll do here is, let me just get rid of this one. So what do we have? The same lab from the previous video, where a typical you have a headquarters, branch, and all of that. We'll not be using the branch setup actually for this video. We just have a Linux box inside the behind the firewall. This is a firewall, this is the FTD, this is the FMC. So we have a Linux server which is in one of the inside segment of the firewall, and then we have a Linux box outside on the internet, right? So this pink line is basically depicting a GRE tunnel. So we have set up a GRE tunnel. I'll show you that the GRE tunnel is working. So we'll first not create the pre-filter policy. We'll just explore the behavior of the firewall, how it behaves when a tunnel is present, and how the traffic is kind of like policied. So that's something which we will look at. After that, we'll create a pre-filter policy, and then we'll look at the behavior with the pre-filter policy on. Okay, cool. That being said, let's come to our FMC. Actually, before coming to the FMC, let's open up our the Linux servers, right? The two Linux servers I said, inside and outside. The step number 1 would be to get the I'll not obviously be showing you the whole GRE setup, because that's something which is out of the scope. You can look it up how to set up GRE on Linux boxes, but we already have it here, so I'm gonna just get them up. So I'm gonna say interface up tunnel 0 on that box, and let's do the same thing on the inside box as well, right? So we've got, okay, I think that's a mistake. Yeah, probably not. Okay, did I make a mistake? Yeah, I think it is. All right, so by doing this, we've got both the tunnels up, right? That's basically our GRE tunnels. So what we'll do now is, what is the tunnel interface, right? Or the tunnel IP address, tunnel destination IP address. It's going to be, for the other side, it is going to be 10.3.0.2. That's what we have set up. So I'm going to use that, right? So this is the IP address for the tunnel. And you can see the ping is going through, right? Which is pretty cool. What we can also do is we can probably, all right, so I'm on the NGFW, and what we can see is we can look at show connection, and let's do a include GRE, right? You can see that these are actually the outer IP addresses, right? So we are pinging, when you obviously ping, we are using the tunnel IP, which is 10.3.0.2, but the tunnel is getting encapsulated, in the GRE tunnel, and these are the, it's going from, 202, it's going from, it's going to 133.202, right? It's going from 128 to 138. So you can also look at probably the details. You can do show connection detail all maybe, and include GRE, right? So you can see this one clearly shows us, right, 10.3.0.1 going to 10.3.0.2 over the GRE, and these are the outer headers. Cool. So now let's probably do a few things like we would have done, like actually which we did in the previous video, which is test our policies against this, right? What we are trying to do is we want to understand how the firewall behaves without the presence of a pre-filter policy, right? If you just have tunnels, how does it behave? So let's do something like, let's try to do a FTP to that outside Linux box over the GRE tunnel, which is 10.3.0.2, right? And let's probably log in. Alright, so we've logged in, and let's try to create that exploit which we did in the previous video, right? We are basically trying to, using FTP, we are trying to do a directory traversal, which is not expected. So I'm hoping this gets caught in the IPS, right? So we did that. So you see it's not going through, probably because our IPS is basically blocking it. We'll have a look at this later in the logs. Let me close that. In fact, let's probably have a look at it right now, right? So we can probably come to the analysis section. Let's go to intrusion. Let's go to events. Right, you can see here on the top, right? That's what we have. Let's double click on this, and we should start seeing, yeah, there you go, right? You can see it kind of holds good with my statement earlier, right? So your access control policies, they basically look at the inner headers. So this is the inside header, right? This is not the outside header. This is the actual tunnel source and destination. And you can see it got blocked. Our IPS rule got triggered and it got blocked, but that's not important for us. What is very important is looking at the addresses over here. Similarly, we can do some other tests which we did previously, right? Let's again go back to the inside one. Let's probably quit this. Let's do something like wget -t1 and the IP address being 10.3.0.2, and let's try to pull a legitimate file first, right? So again, 10.3.0.2 is nothing but the outside Linux box, and we are trying to pull a legitimate file. Basically we want to trigger our file events, right? So let's do this. So you can see the file got pulled successfully, 100%. So this particular request went through, right? It was not blocked by the firewall. Great. Next, let's try the same thing, but slightly different. Instead of project X, let's probably try to pull some other file. I think there is a file which we have blocked in our policies, which is test3.avi, if I'm not wrong. Right, so using a file policy, we have blocked all the AVI files. So I'm hoping this one should not go through. There you go, right? It's not going through. It's saying read error, connection reset by peer, right? But one more thing which we can try is the malware, right? So we have a malware file with the name zombies. So even this particular file, if we try to pull zombies.pdf, right? So if I try to pull this file, technically this file should not get downloaded, right? If our policy is getting acted upon. And there you go, right? So it got, it was blocked, right? It's saying connection reset by peer. We can actually have a look at these events in the file policy section. So let's probably, as in the file events mainly. So we can go to files, file events. There you go, right? So you can see the information here clearly shown, the custom blocks and all of that, appearing. And you can see the main thing you need to kind of look at here is the source IP and destination. You can clearly see that the access control policy currently is getting applied on the inner headers and not the external headers or the outer headers, right? So that's the main point or the takeaway from what we did till now. Cool. So now let's start by creating a prefilter policy, right? So we'll create a prefilter policy to kind of categorize or match based on the GRE tunnel. And once we have matched based on the GRE tunnel, we will use that prefilter policy inside the access control, or we'll make that prefilter policy interact with our access control policy, and then we will take some action, right? So the action actually is going to be something very simple. We just saw that we were able to ping, right, from, let's do that once again. Where was that? Yeah, so this was FTP. Remember, we are able to ping now, right? So there you go, we are able to ping, but after applying the prefilter policy, we'll be blocking this ping, right? And we'll look at how to do that using prefilter policy. Starting with, let's go to probably object management. We need one particular object for this, which is a tunnel zone. We create something called tunnel zones, right? When we talk about tunnels. So let's come to tunnel zone. I have created here one already, right? You can actually go and give a name to it. So in my case, I've just given it GRE. right? So this is just a way to kind of categorize your tunnel zone so that you can use it in the access policy later, which you'll get to know in a minute. So once you've created all your objects, if you want any other objects, you can create it, but once you're done with that, you can come to Prefilter policy, go and add a new policy, right? Give it a name. I'm going to say NGFW Prefilter policy. Hope the spelling is right. Maybe let's put that. Okay, so I'm going to save, and once the policy is created, let's go and add a rule, right? Add a tunnel rule. So this is what I meant, right? You have two types of rules. One is your tunnel rule and another one is a prefilter rule. If you want to do a prefilter rule, it's pretty straightforward, right? We can actually quickly have a look at it. You can add a prefilter rule and look at here. You have the networks and the ports, right? So using L3, L4, you can literally block something, and or you can basically bypass or do a fast path, right? So that's an option if that's what you want. We'll not be doing a pre-filter rule as such. We'll do a tunnel rule, right? Because that's an interesting use case. So here let's put in a name. Let's say handle. What do you want to handle? We want to handle GRE traffic, right? Cool. So that's the name of our rule. Where do we want to put this? That's fine. Let's put it here. Select tunnel zone. So this is where we will select that object which we created, right? So everything which is getting classified here will be assigned to this particular object called object of tunnel zone called GRE. Okay. What else? So interface objects. Nothing much to be selected. Let's come to the encapsulation and port. So here you can see these are all the encapsulation protocol supported. In our case, we'll just use GRE, but technically I can select multiple here and assign it to a particular tunnel zone, right? So that's predominantly the things which you need to do here. So I'm going to go and add it. Remember to always save it. And okay, maybe I forgot to mention the action, right? We did not select a block. If we had selected a block, then all the GRE tunnel traffic would have been directly blocked. In our case, what we are doing is we are selecting the action called analyze, and by doing that, what we can now do is we can use this tag, this GRE tag what we have set up, we can use it in the access policy, and that's what we are going to do next. And we can further analyze this traffic using the access control policy. So let's come to our access control policy, which is here, this one. And once you come here, the first thing you got to do is you need to select. So there is a pre-filter policy option here. It will be selected to default, but you can change that now to the one which we created, which is this one. Let's go and save it. Okay. And what else? So now once you have selected that, the next is you need to create few rules, right? Because what we want to do, we want to use that pre-filter, the intelligence which is coming out of that pre-filter policy, and we want to kind of further analyze it inside our access control. That's our use case, right? We want to block ICMP. So let's go and add a rule here, and let's probably add it to the mandatory section. What is the rule going to be? We'll just say, okay, block ICMP over GRE. That's what we want to do. I'm going to do a block with reset. Okay. Available zone. So this is where you can actually search for the GRE zone which you created, right? The tunnel zone. This is how you can map your pre-filter, classification here in the access control. So this is how I can select. I'm going to add this to the source. What else? So in the application, probably I can go and select the ping traffic, right? So I'm going to select ICMP or search ICMP, select ICMP and add to rule, right? So I want to block ping, so that's why I've selected ICMP. In the logging, probably let's go and log this at the beginning of the connection, and then we'll go and add this. Cool. So we've added one. Let's also add one more rule, but this time let's probably add it into the default. That's the below, because this is going to be like a catch-all, and for what? This is going to be allow GRE traffic, right? Except ping, I want everything else to go through, right? So ping is the only thing we want to block. So this one is going to be allow. Okay. Zones. So again, the zone has to be selected, which is GRE, and let's send this to the source. What else? Inspection. In the inspection tab, always make sure that you select your relevant intrusion policy as well as your file policy, and I think we are good. So we can go and probably OK here, apply and save. That's mainly it, guys. So we have created a pre-filter policy. We have attached the pre-filter policy to the access control policy. And then what we did is we added 2 more rules here to make sure that we block ping but allow all the other traffic. Okay. The very next step is obviously to deploy this. So we already know how to deploy it. Let's go click on deploy, select our device and go and hit the deploy button. Now let's wait for this. I'll pause it and I'll be back once the deployment is done. Alright, so it's gone through. So let's try some things which we want to try. So first, let's probably come to the outside Linux server and start a packet capture here or do a TCP dump on the tunnel, right? So there you go. And from the inside interface or from the inside Linux box, let's try to do something which is allowed, right? So we want, we know that ping is basically blocked, but doing a wget should work. There you go, it worked, and you can see the packet capture, here has captured it. Now let's try doing a ping. There you go, right? So we did a ping, and you see here we are not able to get the, we are not able to get the packets here on the right hand side, right? So here also the packet, the ping is basically not going through. You can see 0 received, 100% packet loss. We can probably have a look at this on the events. Maybe let's see if it is getting captured. So maybe you can go to analysis, connection events, and yeah, let's see if we can see this somewhere here. Yeah, and you can see here, we can see the block with reset happening, 10301 going to 10302. The ICMP over the GRE, you can see it's getting blocked with reset, right? That's because of our policy getting activated. We could probably also go to policies, access control, and probably have a look at the hits over there. Maybe come to the NGFW policy, click on the pencil icon, come to analyze hit count, right, and select the device NGFW1 and probably hit the refresh here. Right, there you go. So it's 36 now. I'm running continuous ping. So if I refresh it once again, maybe the count should increase. There you go, 42, right? You can see the count increased. Similarly, you can see the allow GRE traffic, that is also getting captured because we are allowing wget to go through. Right, so that's a simple use case of how you can use prefilter policy. The main thing you need to remember is prefilter policies are used mainly for the purpose of either blocking certain traffic right before any processing happens, right, any deep inspection happens, or you can also use prefilter policy to quickly bypass any inspection by directly sending the traffic to the output interface without any major inspection. That way you can save the CPU. The other option of using prefilter policy is to kind of work with your tunnels. The firewalls basically always look at the inner header of the tunnel, but if you want to kind of look at the outer headers, make a decision and kind of tag the traffic with a certain value, like how we have tagged here. We have tagged the traffic with the tag of GRE, right? And then once you tag it using that tunnel zone, you can then use that particular tag subsequently in your access policies and make further analysis and make further decisions based on it. Right, so hope that was useful, guys. This is actually a policy which I had not covered in detail in my previous set of videos, so I just wanted to make a video on that. Hope you found it useful. Thanks a lot. Have a good day. Bye.